Right, I see we already have 26 participants, so we'll kick off. Welcome to this book launch. I'm Ashok Khanda. I'm the director of the Collaborating Centre for Values-Based Practice, based at St Catherine's College in Oxford. And you might well ask why I'd be chairing this, because you could easily say that I wasn't qualified, given that I come from a background in vascular surgery and transplantation. I'll maybe give a quick explanation to that, but to start with, it gives me great pleasure to open this book launch on the existential structure of substance misuse, a psychopathological study by Guilherme Messas. You will know Guilherme is a clinician at the Santa Cruz, the Sao Paulo School of Medical Sciences. He's also the South American lead for the Collaborating Centre for Values-Based Practice. And I did wonder whether he'd asked me to speak because he thought that all surgeons were psychopathological and I would have a deep understanding of this. And then on reflection, I thought, well, possibly he didn't think that about all of my colleagues, just me. But I also remember that as a medical student, I did look after in my career lots of patients with substance misuse as a primary presentation of their problems. And the one thing I learned as a student from one of them was, he said that those of us who have this predilection, these are his words, not mine, can be incredibly devious in the way we present ourselves to society, because we have this deep need for something and will sometimes do almost anything to get it. And that's been the sole education I had on substance misuse. So I'm here primarily to learn, but also to welcome our esteemed panelists. But I'm going to start, Guilherme, by asking you as the author to maybe say a few words about the book and what made you write it and what we should seek from it.
Thank you very much. Ashok, very good to see you, and thank you for accepting chairing this session. Actually, it's a challenge to be chaired by someone who understands for such an important field of medical practice without specifically understanding about psychopathology. Talking to general audience is always more difficult for an author. So I hope I can be able to make myself understandable for you and all of the panelists as well, which I welcome, and all the audience. I'm very happy to be here and to share this moment with all of you, and as always hoping to be with you as soon as possible in physical presence, if I may. I'd like, in these opening words, to give a brief account of the context in which this book was born, more of a personal context. And after that, already opening for the panelists, to point out certain developments to which I'd like it to contribute. So first, the context, which I will divide into a remote and a recent one. This book's remote origins go back, unfortunately, I must say, rather to a deprivation in my medical formation than to an excess. My personal encounter with phenomenological psychopathology occurred because of the insufficiency of the other psychopathologists that were so influential in the 20th century. My time of training, the end of 20th century, insufficiency to actually portray altered mental experiences. At that time, still at the end of the 20th century, I began to study on my own, so to speak, this classical phenomenological literature. From these studies, in the 90s, in the 1990s, I started to offer some study groups, some group of persons which were like me, who like me felt the need for a deeper understanding of psychopathological experiences. So from this group of unsatisfied, so to speak, young doctors, later came about a society, a Brazilian Society of Phenomenological Psychopathology, SBPFE, which is still active today and responsible for an important scientific journal called Psicopathologia Fenomenológica Contemporânea, Contemporary Phenomenological Psychopathology, of which I was then founder and for some years editor, first editor and during some years editor as well. This informal experience gained momentum, leading to what I call the recent origin of this book. From 2013 on, this independent group related somehow to this society became a master's program in phenomenological psychopathology, which is a full-fledged instituted university program, which I've been running at Santa Casa at São Paulo School of Medical Sciences. And it is important to say that in tandem with this development, a way of doing clinical psychiatry, totally based on this ever-growing knowledge, phenomenological knowledge, was being informally created by this group, which I headed then, but were many young doctors. Precisely with the beginning of this official program, official master's program in 13, came the need to bring together and, so to speak, to make it official the way I informally came to understand phenomenological psychopathology, particularly as this understanding informs clinical decision-making. It was, for me then, and a contemporary as well, the core aim of phenomenological psychopathology, which is shapes clinical decision-making, guides clinical decision-making. This is the root of this book. Its writing was, to be honest, a collective work, because it brings together observations made over many years, both in clinical experience and in hours and hours of supervision, clinical supervision between the peers. As it usually happens in the unfair real world, though it's a collective work, only my name is in it. And as a note, and also the name of Lívia Fukuda, which is the assistant of this book, my colleague as well, without whom the book would not have been possible. So what is this book about? It tries to contribute to an area of psychopathology and also phenomenological psychopathology, to which even the classical tradition had contributed little. That is, substance misuse, addiction, psychotic-related problems, and so on. This field of psychiatric practice is also my main area of academic expertise. So I merged these both fields of my practice, phenomenological psychopathology and substance misuse, in this book. This field of substance misuse and its psychopathological experience requires, as far as I know, as far as I understand it, both and specific merging, blending of both a general and a specific knowledge of psychopathology. Maybe that's why it's been so neglected in the history of psychopathology, for this specific blending of knowledges. And how did this book intended to do that? Well, methodologically, by exploring a perspective, a way of doing phenomenological psychopathology that seems to me the most appropriated for the current needs of psychiatry. Needs like person-centered psychiatry, needs on autonomy, on respect for particular personal and cultural values, need of a shared decision-making support. This is the dialectical way of doing psychopathology, which I call dialectical phenomenological psychopathology. This is the way I present and I develop and I contribute in this book. This dialectical perspective of phenomenological psychopathology personally approached me deeply to the Collaborating Center for Values-Based Practice, which organizes this event, since this perspective of phenomenological psychopathology reflects and expresses the very values and comprehension of mental care that are espoused and developed in this institution, in the Collaborating Center, of which I am honored to be part and lead here in Brazil and South America. And as we will see in the next few minutes, due to the collaborations of the contributions of the panelists, values, psychopathology, and phenomenology have a profound synergy. Well, finally, before concluding this opening remarks, I'd like to thank some people. First of all, Rebecca Atkinson, who is here, who will be the next to contribute for the reasons you're going to know soon. Matthew Ellicott for the organization now. Caroline Bellissimo, who makes the correspondent work here in Brazil for the support in the organization. And particularly my publisher, Springer Nature, in the person of Erika Ferraz, whose competence and patience with this difficult author enable this work. I should say that I am very honored to be here with all of you, and thank you for your attention. And welcome all of you for the session.